Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely pumped for today's explainer. We're going to be unpacking a classic puzzle that literally tests exactly how our minds process problems. It's called The Impossible Room, and honestly, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about finding solutions. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so I want you to imagine just for a second that you are the main character in a thriller. You wake up in a completely empty room. You're trapped. And you quickly realize that brute physical force, yeah, that isn't going to save you here. Your mind is the absolute only way out of this thing. Notice that immediate, almost heavy sense of claustrophobia. Wakey, wakey, you're in a room with absolutely no windows. Like none. And there is exactly one door. And yes, it is securely locked. There are 0 physical exits in sight. The walls are solid, the floor is totally bare, and the reality of your confinement is really starting to set in. But hey, you aren't entirely empty-handed. You look down on the floor and you realize you have exactly 3 items to work with. That is it. A mirror, a table, and a single piece of paper. No crowbar, no bobby pin to pick the lock. Just these 3 completely mundane, everyday objects sitting quietly on the floor. So what do we do with them? Well, naturally, you pick up the piece of paper first. And this brilliantly illustrates the crux of our whole dilemma. The paper says, and I quote verbatim, "The key is not in this room, but the room contains everything you need to escape." Now, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that despite that heavily locked door, salvation is literally right in your hands. The answer is right there, even if the traditional tool, a physical key, is explicitly missing. So, what do? You probably launch into a frantic search for a hidden trick or a secret key, right? You check under the table? Nothing. You look behind the mirror? Absolutely nothing. You frantically check your own clothes, your pockets, your shoes. Still nothing. You even run over to the door hoping there's like a loose hinge or a keyhole you can peek through. Nope. The frustration really builds. Every single hiding spot turns up totally empty. An hour goes by, and you are no closer to the outside. Which brings us to the ultimate question. How do you escape the room? I want you to literally pause for a second here. Really, take your time to think about a solution before we move forward. You have a mirror, a table, and a piece of paper. The paper says you have everything you need. So, how do you get out? Okay, if you're like most people, your brain probably jumped straight to physical logic. You might have assumed you needed to smash the mirror to use a glass shard to pick the lock, or, I don't know, dismantle the wooden table to use a heavy leg as a battering ram against the door. But contrast that with the explicit hint we were given. It was a gentle reminder from our piece of paper that everything you need is already perfectly laid out for you. Smashing and breaking things? That is for sure not the answer. And that brings us to a magical shift in perspective, because to solve this, we actually have to completely abandon physical reality. If physical logic fails us, we have to rely on lateral thinking. We're about to step out of the literal 3-dimensional world of locked doors and wooden tables and step right into a highly energetic, wonderfully cheeky linguistic twist. Are you ready for this? Let's walk through this terribly punny sequence step by step. First, you look into the mirror to see what you saw. Right? Got it? Now, you take that saw you just found and you use it to cut the table in half. Just stay with me here. Next, you take those 2 halves of the table, put them together, and as we all know, 2 halves make a whole. Finally, you just climb right through that hole in the room and you escape. I know, it's terrible. Feel free to fully embrace the total groan factor of this lateral thinking trick. It is literally a complete triumph of wordplay over woodworking. So did you solve it before hearing the answer? Honestly, don't feel bad if you didn't. This explainer perfectly highlights how our brains are wired to stubbornly lock us into literal, functional thinking. We see a table, we think wood. We see a mirror, we think glass. We rarely see the words themselves as the actual tools. So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought. The next time you find yourself stuck in a seemingly impossible situation, are you actually trapped by the physical walls, or are you just missing the linguistic door? Keep challenging your perspective, and I will see you in the next explainer.